is there a path for Anas Sarwar to become First Minister at the next election? I mean, I looked at some of the opinion polls, and 10 months before the general election, I think that Labour were regularly about 20 points ahead of the Tories. We're about 10 months away from the next Holyrood election, and Labour are about 11 behind the SNP. Now, that can change, but the dynamic is completely different. And I think that 11-point gap between Labour and the SNP is pretty much on Starmer. I think it's their slow start that has triggered this massive fall in support for Scottish Labour. And unless there is that marked improvement in London, I think it's Anas Sarwar who's going to suffer.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think you're right to say that the Scottish election is going to be largely determined by what's happening in London. But I think that Anas can do a lot to increase his chances. But ultimately, if people feel that Labour is failing them in Westminster, they're not going to vote for Labour in Scotland. I mean, I think you could see it's just so closely related that, John Swinney is not an absolute genius. His bounce when he became First Minister was all to do with Labour doing badly. Labour seemed to be doing a bit better now. They had the victory in the by-election, but the truth of that by-election was that there was three parties who all got very similar amount of votes. And if Labour over the next year are seen to be U-turning, flailing, taking money off of pensioners, taking money off disabled people, that's a disaster for Labour in the Holyrood election.
Yeah, I mean,
I think if the SNP get back in, there's an argument for saying devolution's failed, because
if they get back in, that's because the people of Scotland have put them back.
How can a party that has performed so badly, driven so many public services into the ground, keep getting re-elected on the basis that a different government isn't doing very well? It's nonsense.
I do think it's as simple as that, because there will be policies. There are policies that the SNP have delivered since 2007 that are popular. We may not agree with them, but they are.
But I mean, just to go back, so I noticed you quoted Tam Dalyell earlier with the motorway with no exits. He was famously against devolution and said, look, this is just leading to Scottish independence, and there's no way to stop it once we get on that motorway. Obviously, it's another thing that Blair delivered that now looks in
Tam Dalyell was wrong.
In hindsight, well, it wasn't totally wrong. It looks like it's a motorway that just delivers permanent one-party governance for Scotland.
Well, because if it was a motorway to independence with no exits, it's a pretty long motorway.
Well, that's what I mean. But it's the ultimate destination is you can't get rid of the SNP. How badly can they do? And they still
you'll get rid of the SNP when people stop voting for them.
But they're only voting for them because they don't like what Labour are doing. It's a gift to the SNP.
Well, look, you're right about...
They're only voting for the SNP because they don't like what Labour are doing.
No, they're not only voting. Look, the NHS is on its knees. The education system is a shambles, and key public services, as you say, and that is on the SNP. But there's another side of it which you have to take into consideration when you're looking at why people vote SNP. You got low-income families getting the Scottish Child Payment. You've got working parents and non-working parents getting all that free childcare, and then of course you've got free prescriptions, free higher education. You don't have to agree with those policies, but you have to recognise that they are popular, and that's part of the reason why the SNP keep getting re-elected. It's not simply a response to whichever government is in London. That's part of it, but it's not the full story.
No, but all these policies are only possible because the Treasury gives such a generous block grant to the Scottish Government.
Devolution's been a success. It's been a success. I mean, I don't think anyone can look at the government in Edinburgh or the Parliament in Edinburgh and say, it's way worse than the Parliament in London. I mean, I think government in London in the last 15 years has been an absolute shambles. It made this country an international laughingstock. The idea that we call for the Scottish Parliament to be abolished.
Why are we an international laughingstock?
Look at Brexit and the damage that's been inflicted on the country.
Do you genuinely not think that your average Scottish person doesn't look when they think who is my government, they don't look to the Scottish government increasingly as, and for good reason. It's because they are actually running things. Or you could complain about the way they're running things, but devolution has been a success in the sense that people see the Scottish government as their government, that their MSP is the person who's their representative in it.
I think some people who are switched on do. I think generally people think Westminster run things because the SNP, when anything goes wrong, the SNP blames Westminster. When anything goes well, the SNP takes credit. It's a game that has been set up, and the rules are so skewed because the SNP can never be the UK government. So they can always either take credit or deflect blame as the circumstances allow.
Sounds like you might be making an argument for independence. Just, you're going to have to cut one of those governments.
I'm more making an argument for abolishing Holyrood. I think
it's a ridiculous argument. Look, we've got two struggling governments. That doesn't mean to say that you abolish the institution of the Parliament. What you do is you vote for another party to get a better government. And that is something that has been available to the Scottish people since, I think, 2011. And they've chosen not to. They've chosen to put the SNP in. The issue is that pro-UK parties have not put forward a positive alternative that has been appealing to the average Scottish voter. They've been very poor. And 10 months before another Holyrood election, I think the onus is on Labour to raise their game on policy and to have a manifesto that excites people. Simply saying that everything that the SNP's done since 2007 has been terrible. I've heard that tune before. It doesn't work. And if that's all the opposition parties have got to say, you're looking at a fifth-term SNP government.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say since 2007. I would say since probably 2011. I mean, the first Salmon government, supported by the Conservatives, did a lot. I mean, we're still all the policies that you say are popular go back to then.
Well, I think one of the and the childcare, I think, are Sturgeon.
Yes, yeah.
And also I think the reason people will continue to vote for SNP in quite large numbers is because they feel those policies would be under threat if someone else.
I would argue the main driver for and this, I totally respect this viewpoint. I understand it. I get it. I probably, like you say, keep making the argument for it inadvertently. The main reason for voting for the SNP is because you want an independent Scotland. It's not because you think they're doing a good job and, giving out loads of extra benefits. The number one reason for voting for the Nats is because you're a Nat. That is just a fact. And that's kind of...
it's one person, one vote. I mean, you can vote for whichever party for whatever reason you want. That's just a simple fact of life. All right, that was lively and enjoyable, but we'll have to wrap it up there. Thanks again to John and to Ben for joining me. You can listen to this episode of Planet Holyrood on Spotify or Apple Music, or watch it on the Daily Record YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok for the latest news and the best bits of the podcast.
We will never turn our back on a single Scot.
We've got to wrestle with those challenges.
This is the same nonsense we have heard time and time again.
This is our country. Let's fix it together.